What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Blazers Uprise podcast. This is the Wednesday edition of the podcast. We're going to be covering some trade stuff. We're going to be doing our picks against the spread as we always do, and that is what's on store for the podcast today. We'll also take your questions. We'll pretty much freestyle this podcast like we have been lately. I like the way it flows when we just kind of freestyle and don't really have it planned out, don't really have it structured. Most people would structure their podcasts. I like to do it where we just see where it goes. We let it flow, and since it's live, you guys kind of dictate what we talk about as well. We'll talk about what you guys talk about. Tommy Thompson says, Tori, see the article about the Olshey interview? Yes, I have. That is something that we can talk about. Yes, Eric doesn't have a beard. He's looking 20 years younger right now. Yeah, so we'll roll straight into our picks against the spread, man. We got a few games tonight. I like that we're starting it before the first game for once. We're starting this a little earlier today than we normally do. That's good.
Yeah, let me load them up here.
Also, do you guys like? I am working on a new interface. I'm gonna get rid of your Skype logos there. I didn't realize those were gonna show up.
Jeez, man.
I mean, it wasn't showing up when we were in the call before. I don't know what happened, but anyway, there we go. You guys like his background like that during the day? He was trying to figure out how to pin up his Blazers blanket. I was like, you know what, the trees are kind of cool. I like that background. I am working on a new podcast, graphic interface for this.
I got the
something that looks better, but
the Christmas train window clings up there.
You can see the first one. That's about it. But yeah, no, I like that background, man, because he was scrambling around. I was waiting on him. That's why the stream was live and wasn't going on air for a while.
The first time
clips, I was like, just roll with this.
The first time ever you were sleeping.
I mean, I've been up since 4 a.m.
Yeah.
I fell asleep after that. After our post-game stream, I fell asleep pretty much right after that.
Oh, nice.
Which is rare for me. So,
that's really weird.
Yeah, I don't know. Sleep is so weird for me. Anyway.
All right, you want to let me know the chat's picks?
Yeah, I'll let you know the chat's picks. If you are watching this podcast after it's been live and don't want to hang around for the picks against the spread, hopefully I'll remember to put a timestamp down in the description box below. But this, after the podcast is live, after it's done airing, once it's a video on the channel, some of you guys might like to watch this, but I know some of you guys might not care for this because, this is something that we're engaging with our community live as we go along. It's kind of it's more for the live audience, since we're including their picks in this. So just keep checking the comment section for a timestamp, because I want to try and timestamp when we get into the meat of the episode, which is after the over and under picks. But I love doing the over and under picks, so got to start off with that before we get into the meat of the show. We got some good things planned. Kevin Love, Danilo Gallinari stuff. But before that, picks against the spreads. So let's go. How did we do Monday? I think I did pretty good.
No, you didn't.
What was my record?
Hold on just a second. My computer deleted it for some reason.
That's rough.
I had the totals. I think you went 3-4, but give me just a second.
I mean, that's not horrible.
Yeah.
Lil Bakel says, yo, just joined. New cameras, quality looking crisp. Eric has a new laptop. I don't know if that's affecting his quality. But yeah, my camera's looking a little bit crisper than usual. It does look a little crisper. I don't know why that is, but
it probably helps having quicker feed too. It's not as pixelated probably.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Just looks overall all around better.
All right, so
What's up, Dame Dalla? What's up, Portland Made? What's up, Beephead? He says stream looks much improved. I don't know, man. I don't know why. I didn't do anything different.
Oh no, you were 2-5.
I was 2-5.
Yeah. So
I thought that
you got
you
Detroit.
ain't changing up my picks, man.
Nope, you got Detroit won and Sacramento covered the 12-point, or they beat Houston outright, so they covered the 12-point spread. You picked Milwaukee to beat Orlando by more than 12.5, which they didn't. We both picked Toronto to cover by more than 6, which they didn't. We all picked Utah and OKC won that game outright.
Yeah.
We all picked Minnesota and Phoenix won that game outright. And then you and Chat picked Golden State, and I picked Memphis, and I believe Memphis won that game outright, right?
Golden State. So, yeah. So you were 3 and 4.
1, 2, 3.
Adjusting on the fly here. Your stuff's getting deleted. Eric's pounding them keys.
I just told you. I was 4 and 3.
You were 4 and 3. Okay.
Yeah.
I think I'm still leading you, so that's good.
All right. So first game tonight. Sorry about that. Is Boston is in Indiana, and Indiana is 1.5 point favorites at home.
I'm gonna take Indiana there. I like rolling with Indiana. So we just had a little spike there. It should be good now. Indiana is gonna be my team.
I'm gonna take Boston in this one. Boston's been playing really good. They got Gordon Hayward back now too. So I think they're gonna get this win on the road. But should be a good game.
Yeah, Boston is the chat's pick. What's up, Eddie Simba? How many games do we got tonight?
I've marked down 6 so far, and I'm still going 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
Oh, jeez.
There's 11.
This is going to be a long segment. All right. What we got next?
Houston is 11.5 point favorites in Cleveland.
I'm going to take Houston. I'm going to take Houston. Big spread. That's a tough spread. But I'm going to take Houston. Cleveland's trash. Cleveland's gotten blown out a lot.
Yeah, I'm also going to take Houston in that one to cover the spread.
Baron Family Adventures says, hey, first time here. What's up, man? We do post-game live streams. We do Monday, Wednesday, Friday podcasts. And some videos here and there covering the Blazers, man. So hopefully you enjoy the channel. Chat's going with Houston. Alrighty, what we got next?
Next up is the LA Lakers in Orlando, and the Lakers are favored by 8.5.
I'm gonna take the Lakers. Figured the spread would be a little bit more. Orlando might keep it close, but I'm gonna take LA.
I'm also gonna take the Lakers. Orlando has been playing well, but the Lakers have looked really tough lately.
Yeah, sadly.
Yeah.
I hate to say it. We got 3 for the Lakers. We got 3 for the Lakers. 4, 5 for the Lakers. Alrighty, we got 6 for the Lakers. Chat's going with the Lakers.
Okay.
We got a lot of voters right now.
Next up, we have the Clippers are 3-point favorites in Toronto tonight. That's a good game too.
Oh yeah, that's
Kawhi's return.
Yeah. Is Toronto healthy?
I'm not.
They got Lowry back.
I know Lowry's.
I'm gonna take Toronto. I'm gonna take Toronto there. I think they'll be amped up, wanting to beat Kawhi in his return there. I think it'll be a really good environment, and I think that home crowd is going to be a big help for the Raptors. I'm gonna take the Raptors there.
All right. I think I'm also gonna take the Raptors. They're pretty good at home. This should be an interesting game.
I'm trying. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think we have 7 for the Clippers. Okay, we got 9 for Toronto now. We had 7 for the Clippers and 7 for Toronto, right. Complete even split.
Wow.
But we got 9 for Toronto now, so that's 16 votes on that game. This is the most people we've had voting in here.
Love the participation.
Tommy Thompson and Morrison Brissett voting Toronto at the end there, making chats pick Toronto.
All right.
We'll do some huge giveaway if chat ends up beating both of us. If chat ends up beating one of us, we'll do like a smaller giveaway. That's the plan with this. That's your guys' motivation to get these right.
We got a really high point spread in the next one between a couple of not great teams. Charlotte is in Brooklyn, and Brooklyn's favored by 10.
I'm going to take Charlotte, keeping it under 10. Brooklyn isn't that good. Charlotte has been solid.
I'm also going to take Charlotte. That's just too high of a spread for Brooklyn to be favored in any game right now.
Tommy Thompson votes for Slut.
All right, next up we got
nice typo.
Utah is 1 point favorites in Minnesota.
I'm gonna take Utah. No, I'm gonna take Minnesota. Utah's been struggling. I picked Utah and it burned me last time I picked them, so I'm gonna take Minnesota. I'm gonna switch it up there.
Minnesota's been struggling too. I'm gonna take Utah.
Yeah, chat for that last game voted. Man, you guys are split. Charlotte, Nets, Charlotte, Hornets, Charlotte, Nets, Brooklyn, Charlotte. Okay,
so
Brooklyn, Charlotte. Yep, we got Charlotte.
All right.
I think chat's going with Utah.
Okay. Next up, we have Atlanta in Chicago, and Chicago is favored by 6.5. I'm going to take Atlanta, sticking with my when there's two crappy teams, go with the team getting points theory.
Yeah, that theory's out. That theory is out your back window behind you for me. That's out the window.
Oh,
I'm going with Chicago.
Chicago. You're on the Chicago
train. Well, I bet against Chicago
lately.
And that burnt me. Well, no, I bet against them on Monday and that burnt me. Toronto didn't cover that game.
Yeah.
So I like to switch it up when I'm wrong, which might not be the best idea. Who cares about the Hawks Bulls game? Bettors are probably the only people that care about that game.
Yeah, that's the only reason to watch. Put a little money on it. All right, next up, we got a couple more crappy teams, depending on your expectations of the Suns. We have Memphis is in Phoenix tonight, and the Suns are favored by 7.5.
Gonna take Memphis, keeping that close.
I'm also going to take Memphis now that Jaw's back. Yes.
We got Hawks for chat, and we got if we win, we get free merch. I'll do some huge merch giveaway, depending on how many games you guys get over us. I might give away. Depending on how well my merch is doing, I might do something like every game ahead of us that you guys are. That's one free shirt. So if you're 10 games ahead of us, that's 10 free pieces of merch. That'd be dope.
Nice.
I'll do something fun for you guys.
It's not going to happen, though. We're too good.
Yeah. Suns is the vote for chat.
All right. And then next up, we have kind of an interesting spread. It's New Orleans is in Milwaukee tonight, and the spread is 9.5, but Giannis is not
Actually,
playing.
Memphis was. Sorry, I completely cut you off. Memphis was it for chat.
All right.
Everything's perfectly split, and it's a ton of votes, so I'm trying to make sure I get majority here. Anyway, you said, Giannis isn't playing.
So New Orleans is playing in Milwaukee, and Milwaukee's still favored by 9.5 without Giannis. That's a tough one because the Pelicans have been garbage.
And who knows how good the Bucks will be without Giannis. But I'm gonna take the Bucks there. They still got Middleton. They still got Bledsoe.
Yeah,
they'll be better. I don't know. They still got a good group of players. Still well coached.
I'm gonna take New Orleans just because that's a lot of points. I'm just gonna keep rolling with that.
Is a lot of points. Where's the merch store? I'm working on the final merch design, man. I came up with like 3 different ideas. This last idea is what I'm going to roll with. I really like it, actually. I'm excited for it. So hopefully dropping it in the next couple of days because I'm working with somebody who's getting me the design. That is the status on the merch. I just got to wait for that design and then set up the merch store. Probably do it through a third party since I don't have my own website yet, and we'll do it like that. That's the status with that because I know I've been teasing a mellow hoodie. Anyway, let's see. New Orleans Bucks. All right, we got the Bucks.
Okay.
I feel like they're completely like splitting this almost down the middle on every pick just to make it tough for me, man.
That's funny.
Just to make it tough.
All right, next game we have OKC is in Sacramento tonight, and the Kings are favored by 2. These are 2 teams that are actually playing quite well lately.
I'm going to take Sacramento there.
Okay. I'm going to go with Sacramento as well.
Yep.
That's a tough one, though.
Family Adventure says I want either Mellow or Dame hoodie. I got that Mellow hoodie coming up, man.
And then last up, we have the New York Knicks are in Golden State a night after getting throttled by Portland. And the Golden State Warriors are 5-point favorites at home. Such a weird. There's some tough games to pick today.
Yeah. What's your pick for that?
God, this is testing my theory, but I'm gonna go with the Knicks getting 5 points when it's 2 crappy teams.
I'm gonna take the Knicks as well. I didn't even remember what 2 teams you said.
It was Knicks and Golden State. You took Golden State.
I just saw them picking Golden State, and I heard you pick Knicks +5, so that I didn't even have to ask again.
Yeah.
Because I was trying to count. I keep trying to count these. Kings for that last game,
okay.
And then I'm taking the Knicks as well. They both suck. And chat's rolling with the Warriors because we just saw how bad the Knicks suck.
Right.
Actually, I'm changing my pick. Knicks are on a second. No, I'm not going to change my pick. Screw it. Second night of a back-to-back, but they weren't really competitive. They didn't really play that hard.
Most of their guys played limited minutes, yeah.
Exactly. So keeping it with the Knicks. Chat's going with the Golden State, though.
All right. Got it all saved.
Alrighty. Was that the last game?
Yep. Timestamp that.
Alrighty. Yeah, we're at let's see, like 17-ish minutes. I'll timestamp it. After this, just remind me. Or you can do it since you can log into my YouTube account now. Or you can do it on your own account. Either way, for those of you who clicked that timestamp watching this after it's live, welcome to the Uprise podcast. The main thing we got to talk about today is Kevin Love reportedly wants to go to the Portland Trail Blazers, but then reportedly, people close to him are disputing those original reports that he wants to go to the Portland Trail Blazers. So you got reports on both sides of things here. Some reports saying he wants to go to the Blazers. Some reports saying those reports are false. The thing is, those initial reports saying Kevin Love wanted to be traded to the Portland Trail Blazers, it wasn't from Adrian Wojnarowski. It was from Kevin O'Connor. That's his name, right?
Yeah.
Kevin something. Yeah, Kevin O'Connor. So it wasn't like one of the leading guys. So it wouldn't shock me if those reports weren't 100% true. It would shock me if Woj reported something like that, and then it came out that those reports weren't true. You know what I mean? So always got to consider where the information is coming from. Kevin O'Connor isn't one of those top guys, in my opinion, for breaking NBA news, but he's not like a nobody either. So it's just kind of interesting how there was some reports that refuted that original intel that Kevin Love wanted to go to the Blazers. So basically, who knows if he wants to come here or not. The thing is, before it was reported they wanted to come to the Blazers, we're talking about reports on reports on reports here, but the initial report is he wanted to play for a contender.
Mm-hmm.
Blazers don't really look like a contender, so it surprised me a bit when he said he wanted to play for the Portland Trail Blazers. Now I think it's kind of back with this latest stuff that, okay, you didn't specify the Blazers, he just wants to play for a contender. And who knows how much he cares about going home. Basically, we know nothing. We got all these reports, yet we still know absolutely nothing. I don't know what you think, what you believe, but...
Well, do you want to kind of mix in Olshay's comments here? Because his...
Yeah, that too.
So, the main thing that stuck out to me out of... Quick had an interview with Olshay. He posted on The Athletic today. And it was actually kind of interesting how much Olshay opened up about things. He usually doesn't give as much information as he did in that. But
And I've been wanting to hear from Olshey after this start.
Yeah.
I've been wanting to hear what he has had to say. So it was a very interesting article. You guys can read it for free. It's not behind a paywall at The Athletic. It's a free article over there. So I suggest you guys go read that for some intel.
The most underlying point he made was that they weren't going to do anything to salvage this season that would risk their future team. But the most intriguing thing he said to me was that he foresaw a starting lineup of Dame, CJ, Hood, Collins, and Nurkic next year, which to me signifies that he would not make a trade for a guy like Kevin Love, because you would think that if he was saying that those were going to be the starters next year, that you would be filling out more like role type players, not starter level players, in my opinion. I don't know if that necessarily rules out any of those trades, because obviously if he got an offer he couldn't refuse, I'm sure he would take it. And that's not knowing like what kind of guys are on the table or whatever. But yeah, I don't see them trading for Love and him coming off the bench either. It would make more sense for Collins to probably come off the bench in that situation. So I don't know if that maybe it got back to Love that the Blazers weren't really interested in him, and so he kind of backtracked on what he said about trying to play for the Blazers to save face or something.
That could be a possibility for sure.
But at this point, I'd be kind of surprised if the Blazers did trade for Kevin Love.
I'd be surprised too. I don't know. I don't really want him to go out there and get Kevin Love, but for some of the other ideas that I hope they do pursue, reading this article kind of has made me worried that the Blazers might not end up doing anything.
Yeah.
Which would be possibly the worst case scenario. Because there's either two lines of thinking here, right? The team is good enough that you think it can make a bit of a run, so then you maybe trade a Bazemore for you trade a Bazemore to Tolliver for an Otto Porter Jr. and take on the second year of that contract, because Otto Porter Jr., once he gets healthy again, will be a big upgrade over a Kent Bazemore, so that'll make you better this year, and then that contract will be a tradable expiring contract next year. Or you don't think you're going to win. In that case, even if it's not necessarily a win-now move, it still makes sense to trade one of these expiring contracts for a 2-year contract, just so you have that expiring contract to trade going into next year that you otherwise wouldn't have. Now, I guess you can re-sign Bazemore or Whiteside to a 1-year deal. The problem is, if you re-sign one of those guys to a 1-year deal so that they're expiring next year, they'll have a no-trade clause. So then it makes it hard to use them as an expiring deal, because players with bird rights that then sign a 1-year deal institutes a no-trade clause. So that's why I'm in favor, no matter what, of trying to trade Whiteside and Bazemore. Because it just make our team better now, and if we're not trying to make a win-now trade, it still makes sense just from a contractual standpoint in terms of assets that we could trade to match salary to make maybe a win-now move next year. We have to make a win-now move at some point. Though the worst-case scenario for us, though, in terms of trying to orchestrate a win-now move, would be to let these expiring contracts expire.
Mm-hmm. And we know that Olshey in the past has kept a pretty tight lip on these kind of rumors and talking about stuff like this. So I almost wonder if maybe he just let all this out kind of to signify that we're not desperate, so we're not getting leveraged in these trades. I totally get, you and I are both on board with not making moves just with this season in mind. And that's, there was that rumor yesterday too with the that you want to talk about for Gallinari, and that seems like a move for this year only to try and win this year, right? Especially,
I don't see why we wouldn't be able to re-sign it.
Yeah, we'd have his bird rights and stuff, but it just seems like giving up a first for Gallinari is like you're trying to salvage this season, Whereas if you go for a guy like Porter or Griffin or Love that have multiple years on their contract, Covington and Jang fall into that category too. Um, like that seems like it can both help this year and future years. So like that kind of fits with what he's saying. I just wonder if like he's been talking to Cleveland and they were like, "Oh, you guys are the desperate ones. You're the one that wants love. You give us all this stuff. You give us Simons and Collins and a first." Or, and he's like, "No way. I'm
Yeah.
not. I'm not making a trade like that." And so,
Yeah. Um, yeah. The problem is though is the trade market is a bit barren this year, so I don't see how
yeah.
Portland has any leverage themselves. They may be O'Shea might be sending a message like you're saying. He might be sending a message to Cleveland saying, "You guys have no leverage here. We're not going to make a desperate win now trade." The problem is Portland doesn't have much leverage either because there will be a team out there that will give up decent value for Kevin Love, probably too much value for Kevin Love, whether it be a team like Denver is a possibility. Their offense has been struggling this year. Maybe they move Millsap for him, thinking Love is more of a long-term answer at that position and
Mm-hmm.
thinking he's a better fit with Millsap. Maybe they don't even trade Millsap maybe for him. Maybe they trade Plumlee and another salary for Kevin Love and have him as the big off the bench, and he can play make a little bit, so he could, I don't know, that would be an interesting big to have off the bench, a huge upgrade over Plumlee. You'll have a team like, Boston doesn't really have the salary, but you'll have teams out there that are just looking for a piece to try and improve their team, and there's not a ton of like star level pieces available. I don't think Kevin Love is star level. I just feel like there's going to be a team out there that's going to view him as star level and is going to give up too much for him. So that's the thing. Portland doesn't have a ton of leverage. It's not like there's a ton of targets out there where Portland can kind of just wait on the guys who aren't traded, can kind of like take their pick of a bunch of targets. It's pretty much you got Kevin Love, you got Danilo Gallinari, and then maybe Robert Covington is available. Otto Porter Jr. if he gets healthy, maybe that's an option. It's not like last year where you had Anthony Davis, you had Tobias Harris ending up getting traded. You had I'm blanking on some targets, but I read a list of them. There was a lot of big names that moved last year. You could probably fill in a couple of those. I was reading an article talking about the trade market last year compared to this year. This year it's not as good as last year.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because that doesn't necessarily mean there won't be a ton of trades like with secondary guys, though. Um,
Yeah.
and we do have a need for a small forward or a wing type player right now with Hood out for the year. So you'd think they have to do something relatively quickly, especially if Bays isn't getting it done in the starting lineup or if he's better off the bench, which he probably is. But their bench has been pretty bad most of the games recently. So they have to do something. So it's like it's weird because I see your point where the trade market might be thin, but like
there are good secondary guys,
right.
Guys like Bertans, guys like that. There are good secondary guys, which I think is the type of guys Portland needs to go after. I'm just talking about there's a lack of like star talent available.
Right.
That's why somebody will overpay for a Kevin Love.
He
might be the best player on the trade market.
Yeah, I'm trying to think so obviously the Griffin trade was during the season, but like a lot of the big trades lately, haven't they been in the off season?
Yeah, last year you had Tobias Harris. You had
that was
Anthony Davis was a rumored.
I'll
look it up right now.
He didn't get moved though, right? So
Tobias Harris?
No, Anthony Davis didn't get traded until the offseason.
But,
Paul George,
like,
Kawhi
he was a guy who was
Leonard,
available who people were focused on trying to acquire.
Chris Paul, Westbrook, Jimmy Butler. I guess Butler got traded during the season last year, but
yeah. I'll look it up right now. There's some other names I'm blanking on, and it'll drive me crazy if I don't look it up. But like we landed a secondary guy who was huge for us last year.
Yeah,
that was Rodney Hood.
Right.
Honestly, the trade we do make is probably going to be for a guy we haven't discussed yet, a guy that we don't expect to be available. Like Rodney Hood wasn't really discussed much last year. I think I titled a mailbag after like maybe going after Rodney Hood and Larry Nance Jr. because they were both playing for the Cavs, and but I was like pretty much the only one that brought up Rodney Hood as a possibility, and it was brought up because one of my viewers brought it up as a possibility. They were on top of things. And, we didn't think we were gonna get Ennis Cantor, of all people. Like
Right.
that was something that left field, him being bought out and then coming here. So it'll be interesting. I wish I could see what the roster is after the trade deadline, because I feel like there's going to be some surprising stuff. I mean, if you told me our roster was going to include Carmelo Anthony,
Right.
So NBA trades deadline 2019. Maybe chat can help fill me in on some big name guys that got traded. Oh, Marc Gasol got traded. He struggled this year, but he was still viewed as like a star level player in a way. You had Porzingis got traded. He was hurt, but Porzingis was a star level player.
So I wonder, because with Griffin's injury history, Otto Porter's injury history, if those are like the big names, I don't know if there's going to be a lot of competition for those guys, because most contending teams aren't going to be in a position like Portland's in, where we're not necessarily contending for this year.
Yeah.
I mean, we could still. I'm not saying we're off from contention, but like usually if you make a play for one of those guys, you're trying to go for it this year, not thinking about next year.
That's true.
And
That's true.
What else is weird is like there's a lot of teams that I think would be interested in Kevin Love, like a Dallas or a Miami type, but they don't have any picks or like assets that they'd be willing to attach to get him. So yeah, it's just weird. Or you mentioned Boston, like they just don't have the right mix of trade assets to go after a guy like that.
I mean, you could see a team like Indiana possibly hop in there,
Right?
wanting to combine Kevin Love with Domantas Sabonis and Miles Turner. I don't know necessarily what salaries they trade out. Probably like T.J. Warren, Jeremy Lamb, something like that. But that's another team that could jump in there. There will be a market for Kevin Love. That's the problem. The fact that there will be a market will make his price more than what he's worth, because like I'm not high on Kevin Love, and you're not. I know you kind of value Kevin Love the same way I do. That's not a guy we should go out there and get. So like if Volshay is sitting here trying to show the Cleveland Cavaliers, hey, you guys don't have leverage on us, we're not going to make a desperate trade, I feel like Cleveland's just going to be like, fine, we got 5 other teams that want Kevin Love that are willing to pay more than you guys are, so fine.
And I'm totally fine with that.
Which, yeah, I'm fine with. I just don't see this turning into.
What's funny is, so I know it's pretty split on people who either want Love or don't want Love, but what's funny is the people who don't want Love, several of them will be like, oh, we never make a move like that, even though they don't even want Love if he gets traded to another team.
It's not the right move, man.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Jimmy Butler got traded to Philadelphia. People were saying we never make a move like that, and then Jimmy Butler went to Miami. Kawhi Leonard left Toronto. These guys are leaving. Anthony Davis probably would have left. You know what I mean? Like, I just, if it's not the right move, it's not the right move. Like, yes, I understand fans wanting a win now move, getting a little bit frustrated when other teams make win now moves and we don't, but it has to be the right move at the same time.
Yeah.
We're not like so close to contention that, okay, any upgrade, we're going to be a contender. In that case, screw it, let's go get Kevin Love. But we're not in that position, so we have to be carefully calculated about the type of moves we make, which is why, like, my trade ideas, that's why there's like multiple layers to that in terms of how we can maybe use them to our advantage next year to then make a big win now trade, and if not, it helps us out hopefully this year and next year. So that's kind of where we're at right now. The thing is, like, Kevin Love, we make a trade for him. His contract won't be tradable. It just seems like it kind of maxes out the team. It's also not what we necessarily need, which we haven't talked about this podcast. We talked about it a little bit last night on our post-game show, but his skill set, like, he's not a good defender. He's a 36% three-point shooter. I know Otto Porter Jr. has been hurt a lot, but Kevin Love's hurt a lot too. I would honestly rather have Otto Porter Jr. One, his contract is better. It's 2 years, 27 million. When you got Kevin Love he's under contract, 4 or 5 years? Worst contract, and he's a little bit older than Otto Porter Jr. Second, Otto Porter Jr.'s better 3-point shooter and a better defender. And he can play the 3 or the 4. Kevin Love, I feel like, is a little bit pigeonholed as a 4, and you made this point last night, his game fits more of a 5 in today's NBA, but he's a bit too undersized to be as effective as possible at the 5. Right. You know what I mean? He's kind of like stuck in between a 4 and a 5. Meanwhile, Otto Porter Jr., I think, would be effective player 3 and the 4. And he fits what we need. We need guys that can hit 3-point shots at an elite clip. And we need guys who can defend. So, I mean, like, Otto Porter Jr. and then one of Covington or Gallinari would be huge. Covington isn't as good of a 3-point shooter as Gallinari, but he is a better defender. Gallinari is like a lethal 3-point shooter. I thought he overachieved last year, but he's been elite offensively this year. Like, he's been phenomenal offensively this year. And if that's a guy we could re-sign, we could trade Bazemore straight up for Gallinari. Probably have to attach a first and then maybe do something like Whiteside for Otto Porter Jr. I mean, you're talking about Otto Porter Jr. being a good defender. You're talking about having 2 40% 3-point shooters at the forward spots. With Otto Porter Jr. and Gallinari, that'd be huge. One of them can defend. The other one's a little bit below average, but big enough where you could play him on the worst forward, the small forward or the power forward. I don't know. That's just the type of moves we need to get. People love Kevin Love, but dude's a 36% 3-point shooter, doesn't play defense. Probably a worse defender than Gallinari, than Otto Porter Jr., definitely Robert Covington. So I don't know. I'm not on board with it.
Yeah, so I mentioned this again last night, but if we resign Gallinari for, even if it was 3 years, $60 million, so it would be the same time frame as a Love deal would be, but you're talking $10 million a year less for basically similar output minus maybe the rebounding.
Yeah.
And I think
it is younger.
I think they're the same age. They're both 31, I think.
Are they?
Yeah.
Maybe they are. Gallinari just seems younger because of how many injuries Kevin Love has dealt with.
Well, Gallinari until last year had dealt with a lot of injuries too. So,
well, it's just like Gallinari's peaking right now. Kevin Love is already on the decline.
I'd probably much rather have Gallinari than Love. But yeah, I don't really like either of them as their fit with our offensive guards right now. I'd rather have more of a defensive power forward
for sure
can score too, but I don't know if that's necessarily an available thing to have. So,
I mean, that's why my pipe dream is somehow getting Robert Covington and Otto Porter Jr.
Yeah.
That's just the type of players we need. So I'm not on board with
because then we have two guys that can lock up, or not lock up, but can guard. Guys like Paul George and Kawhi Leonard better than what we can do right now.
I mean, Covington could do as good of a job on those guys as pretty much anybody who's available. And that's the thing, too, is you'd probably have Covington guard the best forward, small forward or power forward. You'd probably have Covington guard the best forward unless it was like a bigger guy. And then Otto Porter Jr., you'd hide him on the worst forward, but he's not really a guy you hide. Like, he's a good defender too.
Yeah.
It kind of be like what they do with the Minu and Harkless. Both those guys can guard, and Covington could guard point guards. He's a guy who's a good defender to put on point guards. Lengthy, can move laterally, can stay in front of guys. If teams have like a small forward, you could put one of our guards on a small forward, move Covington over to guard a point guard or a shooting guard, a James Harden type, somebody like that. Like, defensively, we'd be a lot better. Then you get Nurkic coming back, you get hopefully Collins at the end of the year. Like, our defense would be peaking at the right time. Our defense would have the potential to be a borderline top 10 defense offensively with that shooting, with Nurkic getting back too. Hopefully Simons is a consistent threat at that point. Like, offensively, I think we'd be a top 10 offense as well. I think that's where this team could end up. But that's the type of moves I'm in favor for. I'd rather have Gallinari than Kevin Love. I'd rather have Covington than Kevin Love. I'd rather have Otto Porter Jr. than Kevin Love. So,
where would you put Bertans in that?
Bertans?
He's being mentioned on chat.
I might honestly take Bertans over Kevin Love because the dude's like a 43% three-point shooter on a good contract. I
Yeah,
don't know how many years he has left, but he's making $7 million a year.
this is last year.
Last year,
Yeah,
okay. And he's gonna get paid, but he's not gonna get Kevin Love paid. And he's younger; he'd be more of a long-term fit.
yeah.
I just, I don't know if we, I don't know how much better we'd be with Kevin Love compared to Bertans. I know Kevin Love is a much, much, much bigger name, but Bertans, man, Bertans is legit, absolute sniper.
Man, he's shooting the lights out lately.
And I think he's, yeah, and I think he's a little bit better defender than Kevin Love. I don't know. That's the thing is like people focus on names a little too much. That's why people want like guys like Kevin Love. That's why people are high on Aldridge. You know, people value like names and storylines a little bit too much, in my opinion. You know, Aldridge, his storyline being traded here would be coming back to Portland. Kevin Love's storyline would be, oh, he's going to play for his hometown, and they're big names. So that's why I feel like those are like the top two guys that like Blazers Twitter has talked about. You know, the Blazers Twitter community. They're just, I don't think like guys like that are the best fit, personally.
Yeah, I agree.
But some to think about though. If we did want to go out and get Gallinari, we could possibly get Nerlens Noel thrown in there too. So if we're talking about trading Whiteside, you know, maybe Whiteside for Otto Porter Jr., we need a center back. If you wanted to go and try and get Gallinari for Bazemore, you could throw in Nerlens Noel there. He brings a lot of the stuff that Hassan Whiteside does. I'm not sure if he's really that much worse than Hassan Whiteside. Nerlens Noel has been killing it, but he's also used to being a backup. He's only playing 18 minutes per game, so he could back up Nurkic once he gets back. I also think he's good enough for if Nurkic doesn't return, Nerlens Noel could slot into Whiteside's role and do just as good of a job as him. So that is something to take into consideration. Maybe we could get Nerlens Noel off of OKC.
Yeah, I wonder how well they perceive his value, because I don't know if he's just like a throw in a trade like that, you know.
Yeah, I mean, you probably have to attach a second, but they're only playing him 18 minutes per game, so
Here you go, giving away all our picks again. No, I'm just kidding.
I mean,
I'm just messing.
yeah. I mean, like I'd throw in Gary Trent. Fine, I won't. I don't throw in a pick. I'll throw in Gary Trent then. But like I do like Gary Trent. I do like Bazemore, Gary Trent Jr., a first-round pick and a second-round pick for Gallinari and Nerlens Noel. I think that'd be a good trade. And then try and flip Whiteside for Otto Porter Jr. That would be a good series of moves. I don't know. I just feel like we have a lot of options to our disposal. Thought it would be good options. And let's tie this back to the start, to about 20 minutes ago. The thing with Olshey is just I'm worried that they're going to stand pat and not do anything, man. That's the vibe I got from that article.
Yeah, that's kind of been their MO, right?
Yeah. My phone's been dead too, by the way, so I haven't been able to read chat, so I don't know what chat's saying.
All right, I'll keep up on it more.
Yeah, you know how the charger is. I have to like prop it up a certain way.
So I was looking at the Washington Wizards, and let me just make sure on this real quick.
I mean, if we're gonna trade for Bertans, you'd probably throw in Mahimi with him just to match like our big outgoing contracts.
I was thinking about that though, like so CJ Miles just had surgery to repair a ligament in his wrist and is probably going to be out for the year. But if you did like Bazemore and a first or whatever you have to give up to get Bertans and include CJ Miles, the trade still works. It saves us, $3.6 million or so.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of eases we can just buy out CJ Miles since he's out for the rest of the year. And then we have that $3.6 million. We could go sign a couple of, minimum guys or make trades for minimum guys. Or we could use CJ Miles' $8.7 million contract to get one of those mid-range guys that we've not been talking about because we don't have the contracts to match up with those guys as an expiring contract.
Couldn't we take Mahimi back and have like $16 million to go out and
Well,
try and get.
I was thinking of in terms of just saving some luck because it seems like they don't want to use like the open roster spots because of the tax implications. So like, um, I was just trying to think of a way to save some money so then you could add a couple roster spots without worrying about it adding to the overall tax number.
The problem with that is I think Washington is really close to the tax, and they probably don't want to go into the tax. Um, and with the salary they're getting back there, they would possibly be going into the tax. You can look that up right now. I feel like that's what you're already doing.
Yep.
Yeah. But honestly, man, what might not be a bad idea would be to send Mahinmi to Minnesota and take on Jang and try and get like a couple second round picks for that. And then try and turn those second round picks into like a guy like Rodney Hood that we got at the deadline last season, and then you'd have Jang's contract next year.
So, depending on what they do with a couple of their non-guaranteed guys, they're at about 128 million. The tax is 132, so they'd still be a million or so under with a trade like that. I don't know if that's worth it to them getting a first round pick for those guys. But
yeah, maybe. I mean, if it just took seconds, then I don't know. I'd do something like taking on Bertans and Mahinmi basically.
Just send the seconds to them. Yeah.
Well, like sending Mahinmi to Minnesota, taking on Jang, getting Jang and Bertans. Minnesota gives up a couple second round picks to get off Jang's contract.
Yeah.
And you take those second round picks and you give them to Washington so that you can get Bertans. Basically, Portland would essentially give up Bazemore for Bertans and Jang straight up without having to include anything else.
I kind of like that. We probably have to add, because that's adding another 3-4 million to the payroll. But I do like that overall.
Like I said, I'm not gonna consider the payroll with that because I know because that's just an extra factor. Like yes, you have to consider maybe Jody Allen doesn't want to pay that much, but she hasn't shown me anything where she's going to pinch pennies when it comes to this team.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to take that in consideration. I've just explained this to you. I've just explained this to chat. For those of you watching the live stream that haven't heard me say this before, keep it in the back of your mind that Jody Allen might not want to take on $4 million, $5 million in salary, just because with the tax included, that's going to be a lot more. That's going to be more than $5 million. There's going to be like $10 million out of her pocketbook at least, tax included. So she might not want to do that. So she might nix a move because of that. But she spent money, like she hasn't done that so far.
Yeah.
They took on $5 million with the Whiteside trade, and that's $5 million, including tax. It's like $10 million, So it's something to keep in mind, but like I'm not considering that when I'm talking about trades because she hasn't shown me that she's going to do something.
I'm kind of thinking of it as a more, not necessarily that she wouldn't be willing to do that, but I'm just looking at it like all her moves so far since she took over have been at the trade deadline when we were over 10 games above 500, and then this offseason when we had championship aspirations. So the fact that we're
a lot more favorable situation
10 and 15 right now, it's like I said, you going to her and asking, hey, can I take on like $5 million, which will also add $10 million in tax at the end of the year on top of that $5 million.
It's just like these trade scenarios are already complex enough that I just don't want to add just another layer that I'm not even sure exists.
But that's the type where we could just add like Tolliver and Hazonia, throw those guys in there and get them out of here, and that hopefully multiple things. But yeah,
I mean it's something to consider for sure. I just mean like from like in terms of like us presenting different trade concepts, different trade ideas to our listeners, it's just like once we start talking about, oh, maybe Jody Allen doesn't want to pay, I feel like that's just like, oh, wow, this is getting more complicated than, it needs to be. Like, keep that in mind, that definitely could be a factor, but it's like in terms of like us presenting ideas, they're already complex enough. It's already kind of like hard to explain. Every layer of things, and then if we're just tossing on, and then they're taking on this much, and that adds this much tax and all that, then it just gets like so complex. It's just
but like us as fans, we want all these trades to happen like now. I'm just saying there might be reasons why some of
Oh
these things
yeah,
can't happen.
and keep that in the back of your mind. I'm just saying, like when we discuss these, I'm not really going to consider that. Maybe I'll note it. Like keep in mind, Jody Allen might not want to take on a bunch of salary in a trade, but like that's like the extent of what I want to.
And
That's the extent of how much I want to talk about it. You
right.
know what I
The
mean?
other problem with so I agree that would be a good trade, Bazemore, and then we'd get back Jang and Bertans. With that, even if we didn't have to give up an asset in that deal, that would be great. But
Hmm.
then we don't have any small forwards on our roster, right? Um, so there'd have to be a
We'd
secondary
have to
move.
make a
Yeah,
yeah. We'd have to make another move there. That's where you talk about Whiteside for Otto Porter Jr. Or you'd try and find somebody else with Whiteside. I don't really know what other targets out there. Or you'd have to go and get a guy like go and make a Rodney Hood type trade where you trade a couple minimum contracts for a small forward like we did for Rodney Hood, or you'd have to go out and get like a minimum contract player like a Glenn Robinson. There definitely would have to be a move combined with that because we would have no small forwards. That's the problem right now is we basically only have one small forward that's worthy of minutes. So that's a position we're going to have to address. That's the thing. When Rodney Hood went
and
down
he's
with
our
that
biggest trade
injury,
asset.
yeah, Basemore's our biggest trade asset. His salary matches up well with a lot of power forwards, which is also a position we need to address. Problem is we only have one small forward now. So when Rodney Hood went down with that season-ending injury, it kind of changed the outlook in terms of this Portland Trailblazers team participating in the trade market because now instead of needing to address power forward, now they have to address two positions. So it definitely changes how Portland is going to approach things. They just got to make a move, man. They got to make a move. I will be on Olshey if they don't make a move. If they let these expiring contracts expire and then they have no way of making a move next season, if this is just the roster we're going to see for the next 2 seasons and we lose Whiteside because I don't think he'll want to come back and be a backup. If we lose Bazemore, he's not even worth much anyway. So I don't know. That's what I'm worried about. I muted you. You good? That's what I'm worried about, man. That's what I'm worried about. Chat is Olshey not doing a single thing because we've talked about trades heavily in years prior, thinking the Blazers are going to make a move, and then trade deadline rolls around. Olshey barely does anything. He's notorious for being inactive around the trade
Real
deadline.
quick,
And
OJ Mayo Light just donated $10 super chat.
shout out OJ Mail.
I
Yeah.
usually watch the replays, so I never get the chance to drop one of these on y'all.
Appreciate it, bro. Yeah, I don't have much help. I could probably bring up my live stream now. I'm back to 7%. My charger has to be like propped up a certain way on my phone, so a lot of times my phone is like barely charged because I get tired of having it like propped up a certain way. I can't use it while it's being charged, basically. So it's a rough life with me and my phone. Crack screen, I need a new phone. But thank you for the $10 donation. I appreciate it, man. Yeah, that's just my biggest fear, man. I will be on here because we're gonna live stream the trade deadline.
Yeah.
If 12 o'clock hits and Olshey hasn't made a move, I'm going to be pounding my fist on the desk, saying, "What the hell, man?" He has to do something, and there is moves out there, and we have tradable contracts now. There's no excuse where like, oh, we couldn't trade Evan Turner because of his contract. Couldn't trade Myers Leonard because of his contract. We have tradable contracts now. Olshey needs to do something. I'm worried just based on that article. I suggest you guys go read it. It's by Jason Quick. That article has me worried he's not going to do anything, man.
Yeah, I hope that's not the case. But it's kind of weird because with the injuries, I mean, we only have 14 people under contract, and 3 of them are hurt like long term. So we're down to like 11 bodies, right? So it feels like we have to do something, like even if it's just bringing in another roster player. Like I'd be surprised if nothing happens from here on out. And I know it's like having a trade if we get Collins and Nurk back playing well at any point this year, but yeah, it'd be kind of weird if we didn't do anything else.
Yeah, it would be surprising It's my biggest fear,
And we've
man.
talked about why, even if we need guys like Whiteside and Bazemore this year, why it still makes sense to trade them. Um, and not like the opportunity cost of getting something for them now versus the smaller avenues of getting something by letting them expire. Um, like it just makes more sense to do that now, in my opinion. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, I do Whiteside for Gorgie Jang and a couple of second round picks. Minnesota would have to toss in something else, but I would do this trade at the trade deadline. Not now
yeah.
because we can wait on that, but I'd take a couple second round picks, Gorgie Jang, and like a filler salary. I don't know what type of filler salary they have, but um, I would do that just because Gorgie Jang could be a backup center to Nurkic. Fits that role just as well as Whiteside. Even though Whiteside's the better player, I feel like Whiteside's going to be unhappy coming off the bench. Probably isn't going to play as well as he's probably not going to play up to his potential.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think that's that much of a drop off if you're talking about a backup center. And then we have $16 million expiring to trade to the trade-a-thon next year, which we wouldn't otherwise have. Because as I said, if you sign Whiteside or Bazemore to a 1-year deal, yes, that'd be an expiring contract, but they'd have a no trade clause, and that's if we re-signed them to a 1-year deal, which guys don't like taking 1-year deals. So that's why I'm in favor of getting like a 2-year contract just so we can extend the expiring contract. If we're not going to use it to make a win now trade this year, then we can have an expiring contract next year to make a win now trade where we'd have the means to make a win now trade. Because if we just let these contracts expire, we're not going to have the proper contracts in order to match salary. We're not going to have the contracts that teams want in order to make a win now trade next year. And then we're stuck.
So just looking at Minnesota real quick, they're kind of like us where they have Wiggins and Towns making a ton of money, and then they have Jang and Covington in that mid range, and then basically all little contracts. So the only other exception is Jeff Teague and his 19 million exception or a 19 million expiring contract. So I don't know if you could get super fancy and include Teague and Jang for something. I don't know, but yeah, it's kind of hard to get Whiteside for Zhang without including Covington as part of that.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. It's going to be a very interesting trade period. There's so many different factors and layers to this that haven't really existed in prior years, and with the team struggling, that just creates more intrigue. Because if the team was doing well, I'd be so much more confident that they're going to make a move. I mean, you would think logically they would make a move because they are struggling, but with that article today, Olsha made it sound like they might not make a move because of their struggles. There's names being attached to Portland, which hasn't really happened in years past. You had Gallinari attached to Portland. You had Kevin Love attached to Portland. Kevin Love being interested in Portland, which, you never hear about a big name player like that being interested in the Portland Trailblazers like that. There's just so many levels of intrigue here. It would suck if it was anticlimactic and ended with absolutely nothing.
Well, we should definitely find out what the costs on those guys are. I don't know if this is what Chap meant, but it's kind of an interesting point. Like Olshey also doesn't want to just ruin both the mindset and the trade value of guys like Whiteside and Bazemore either. So if he comes out and says, "Oh yeah, we're looking to make a big move right now," like then those guys would know that they're being shopped, and that could affect how they play if they don't get traded or a trade breaks down or something. So I don't blame Olshey for what he said. I thought it was interesting that he did say the starting lineup for next year.
Yeah. I'm not really like saying he said anything wrong.
Yeah.
I'm just saying just has me worried that he might not do anything. If he does do something, then making a move, hopefully it's the right move. And in that case, I'm completely fine with what he said for those reasons, keeping those guys' confidence up, keeping their trade value up, things like that. So yeah, I agree with you on that.
Real quick too, I had a back and forth with Holdall, Casey Holdall on Twitter earlier, and
Oh, fun.
I asked him. No, it was like pleasant. It wasn't like a
Okay.
beef thing.
I haven't had the most pleasant experiences with Casey Holdall on Twitter.
But
He,
I asked him if he knew if they had officially applied for that disabled player exception,
hmm
and both he and someone else replied that they're not eligible for it because they don't have 15 guys on their roster. So I went and read the CBA, and I didn't see anything in there that says they have to have 15 guys to apply. Just if you have an injured player, you can apply by a certain date, and he can't. They have to deem that he's not going to return by June 15th, and that you most likely be granted that exception. So I don't know if they're right or I'm just reading it wrong or what.
I think you know the CBA probably as well as him, maybe even a little bit better, because I know you, and I know that you know the CBA very,
But
very, very, very,
yeah, but
very
there
well.
was someone else saying like, yeah, why wouldn't they have an open roster spot? They can just sign someone. So why would they need the exception? But yeah, I thought the
Or you're
exception
talking
was
about 3.6 million, yeah.
yeah, I thought the exception was there to open up other avenues than just signing someone, even if you didn't have the full roster. And I can't find anything that says if you don't have 15 roster spots taken up that you don't get an exception. So
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know. Yeah, we'll see if that ends up being a thing. We'll even who knows how much that even be.
yeah,
Because I've heard 2.6 million, I've heard 3.6 million, but Gordon Hayward was like a $30 million contract, and he got hurt the year he broke his leg, and that was only like a
so
$6 million.
it's
That was only like 20%
I
of his
I do
contract.
know the
So
answer to this. So it's 50% of your contract, or I forget if it's the tax or the regular mid-level exception. It must be the tax mid-level exception,
oh, whichever one is
whichever is less.
yeah,
So
gotcha.
if you made like
Okay,
40
that makes
million, you
sense.
wouldn't get
Yeah.
20 million, you would get 6 million or whatever.
Okay, so with yeah,
So with Hood it is 50%, which is 2.859 million. And then in a
yes.
trade you can take up to 100,000 more. So you're looking at just under 3 million,
Yeah.
2.959.
So basically, what a disabled player exception is, it gives you more. Like Blazers could go out and sign somebody for the minimum, but couldn't sign anybody for any more than that, unless they had an additional exception. You know, they use their mid-level exception though, but they could get a disabled player exception for Rodney Hood and be able to potentially sign a guy for up to almost $2.9 million, or they could bring somebody in via trade without having their salary count as incoming money, and they could take on almost $3 million, but that guy has to be on the last year of his deal. But that would be, they could bring in trade for somebody making almost $3 million on the last year of their deal, and they wouldn't have to send anything else out to match salary, because they just absorbed that player with the disabled player exception,
Mhm.
which they would get from Rodney Hood being out for the season. That's an exception that the Blazers have to apply for, and then it gets approved by the league office.
And they have to apply, I think the date is January 15th is the last day to apply for it.
Okay.
And you have to use it by March 15th. If you sign someone, obviously, if you trade for someone, it's got to be before the trade deadline at February 6th, I think is the deadline this year. So they could sign someone if there is the roster spot restriction, sign someone and then apply for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know why they wouldn't explore that avenue if it's basically like a free roster spot when you have
Yeah.
all these injuries. And Patriotic Truth News is asking if Glenn Robinson is available or if it's just wishful thinking on your part. It's kind of common sense wishful thinking, I think, for you, right?
Yeah, I
So
mean, like it makes sense from because Golden State, they're 4-20, right?
yeah,
You're talking about a guy on a minimum contract. Basically, I think this dude will get a decent offer next season. $5 million, $7 million, somewhere in there. So Golden State would have to use their mid-level exception to bring back Glenn Robinson III. Who knows if they want to use their mid-level exception on him? If they don't, then it makes sense to trade them because it's a lost season for them. He's kind of a veteran player who's been around the league for a bit. So it makes sense for them to trade him to a team that needs a small forward and get back value for him. Even if they might think they want to bring him back, if they could get, a couple second round picks, I still think that would be a pretty good haul for a player like that. And then they could just simply sign a player to that level with the taxpayer mid-level exception who isn't Glenn Robinson III, somebody else. But then they'd have additional assets, the additional second round picks on top of that moving forward. It just makes sense. It's the type of scenario where you see guys get traded a lot. You look at Cleveland with Rodney Hood on the last year of his deal, and he wasn't in their long-term plans, so they traded him for a couple second-round picks. You see that all the time, so that's why I think that's a good move, and I think it's kind of realistic.
Vegan for Life is saying save that money for a buyout person like later on. So I would say that's a little risky with that spot. I guess it doesn't really matter as long as you have an open roster spot. But if we didn't have an open roster spot, yeah, I could see your point. But we have both an open roster spot and possibly that exception, if that's how it works. So you should probably not risk one of those if you have a trade for a guy like Glenn Robinson and not risk him not signing here, because the most people in the buyout market just sign for the minimum because they've already been paid for this season, basically. So they're not getting any more money, really. They just, most of the time, that money just offsets their buyout from whatever team they got bought out from. So that's why a lot of times it doesn't make sense for teams to buy out guys unless they're willing to take the full amount of money. I mean, to take less than the full amount of money. But yeah, so having a little bit more than the minimum to offer for a buyout candidates probably wouldn't be the difference between getting someone or not, because they don't really see that extra money that season.
Yeah. I think that I'm going to try and illustrate this a little bit easier.
Yeah, sorry.
It's hard to illustrate.
Yeah.
But, so, like, say a guy's making $5 million, right? The team that buys him out usually, I think they usually, say, okay, we'll buy you out for, if you end up getting offered, $3 million from your next team that you sign with after the buyout, then we'll give you the other $2 million to make up your $5 million in salary that you're supposed to make this year. If your next team offers you $1 million, then we'll buy you out for $4 million to get it up to $5 million that you're supposed to make this year. Basically, it's whatever they make next is combined with the buyout to add up to the salary they're making that year, so they don't end up making any extra unless you pay them more than they were making before, which doesn't happen because that just isn't something that happens. So usually what you offer a guy on who's gotten bought out doesn't matter. Hopefully that made sense. One of our explanations there. Eugene David said, hey, Eric and Tori, can you talk about what mid-level exception means or protected pick? We talk about it often, but some of us don't know what that means. Can you do a little rundown, please? Yeah, we'll end the podcast with this. This will be this has been an educational podcast, so we will end it with this. For those of you who don't know, so a mid-level exception is something that you can use to sign a free agent when you're over the salary cap. The salary cap this year is it's $109 million. We were making more than that, so we brought back Rodney Hood by using mid-level exception for him.
And there's a difference between if you're in the tax, you only get a certain amount for your mid-level. If you're over the cap but not over the tax, you can use a bigger mid-level exception.
Yeah, there's two different levels of mid-level exception depending on whether you're in the luxury tax or not, which is $20 million more than the salary cap, but different levels of mid-level exception. We don't need to really explain that. To explain what it means,
one important thing is you can only use it one time, though.
Yeah, you get one of these a year. And it's basically a certain amount of money that you can spend on a free agent if you're over the salary cap. Without it, you wouldn't be able to spend money on a free agent because you're over the salary cap. So it's basically just a allotment of money that you can use past the salary cap to sign a player.
I'll take the pick part. if you don't mind.
All right. All right.
So when you're talking about protected picks, if you trade a first round pick, you can lottery protect it, which means if you don't make the playoffs, you would keep your pick. If you made the playoffs, it would obviously fall between like 15 and 30. So the other team you traded it to would get that pick. And then there's all kinds of protections, so it doesn't have to be lottery or not. It could be like top 10 protected or top 20 protected. So if it falls within that protected range, you keep your pick. If it doesn't, the other team gets the pick. And then usually it either reduces in protections for the following years or it turns into like second round picks or something like that. But yeah, it's just a way of ensuring that, let's say Portland traded their first round pick this year, but then won the lottery and got the first pick, that they wouldn't lose that to Oklahoma City because they got Gallinari. So you don't want to really trade unprotected picks if you can avoid it, unless you're getting someone really, really good.
Yep. So the thing is, when Portland got Damian Lillard, they traded for Brooklyn's pick. Brooklyn only protected it in the top 3, which was a huge mistake by Brooklyn. They were notorious for not really protecting their picks. They traded like 3 unprotected picks to Boston. That's how Boston ended up with the first overall pick, that they ended up trading down to 3rd overall to get Jason Tatum, even though Boston was a playoff team at that time. That was Brooklyn's pick that Brooklyn didn't protect. Teams, you rarely see that anymore, just because Brooklyn got screwed over so bad by it. But
and Olshey traded one of those to the Clippers. I mean, when he was with the Clippers, to the Cavs to take on Baron Davis's bad contract, and that ended up being the first pick too.
That was Kyrie Irving.
Yep.
Cleveland got Kyrie Irving originally because Olshey traded an unprotected pick. Yeah, for them to take on Baron Davis. Yeah, that was ridiculous. But Brooklyn ended up trading Portland a top 3 protected first round pick for Gerald Wallace, even though Brooklyn was a lottery team. Mm-hmm. If Brooklyn got into the top 3 in the lottery, they would have kept that pick because it was protected for the top 3, so they would have kept it. But since it ended up being 6th, it ended up getting sent to Portland. Portland ended up with that 6th overall pick. Portland ended up with Damian Lillard. So protections are very important. Hopefully that does a good job explaining things.
And their GM at the time said he only saw 3 good prospects in that entire draft, and it's pretty much wrong about that, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Especially since it was probably 2 of the 3 were probably Michael Kidd-Gilchrist and Thomas Robinson,
right,
since those were like the 2 and 3,
and Anthony
number
Davis,
2 and number 3 guys in that draft, along with Anthony Davis, and those guys have been absolute busts.
But thank you, Brooklyn. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Billy King. I mean, Billy King was his name.
Who knows what this organization would look like if we didn't get that pick, man. This would probably be a completely different roster. We might be contending because we might have ended up like tanking and being horrible for 5 years. Aldridge might have tried to get out sooner, and then we might have traded him if we didn't have Lillard because our team wouldn't have been that good. And I don't know, like this. If we didn't end up with Damian Lillard, if we didn't end up with that pick, the trajectory of our franchise would be so different. We might be contending right now because of how bad we might have been for the past few years. We might be still horrible right now in like a joke franchise of the league. Like, well, it's crazy.
We still ended up with the 11th pick in that draft, so we probably could have found a way to get Lillard anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, it would have been a lot tougher. But yeah, if that's who we really wanted, we probably could have found a way to do it.
But that might have included trading our pick the following year, which we got CJ McCollum with. Yeah. I mean, like it just would have been interesting to see what would have happened. I want to go to a alternate universe where Portland doesn't end up getting Damian Lillard, but just to visit. I wouldn't want to stay there because that would be a worse universe with Portland. I have Dame Lillard. I just would want to see what it would be like.
We drafted Myers Leonard with that 11th pick, Dame Dollar. I think you know that.
Yeah. Myers. Oh my goodness.
But really, I mean, after him in the draft, you got like Fournier later in the first round, and guys like Jeremy Lamb and stuff like that. But Draymond Green in the second round. But I mean, for as bad as a pick that was, I mean, it wasn't that bad compared to what else was there at the time.
Yeah, you had guys like Tyler Zeller,
I I
John Henson.
I went in that draft wanting anything to get both Drummond and Lillard.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was at all possible, but I was hoping to get those two out of it somehow. Um, but yeah, I'm happy with just Lillard. That's fine.
Yeah, I wanted Lillard and Leonard, man. I hit on one of those, lost out with that Leonard pick, but those were the two guys I wanted, so I was ecstatic after that draft. Um, Leonard, and that's the thing though. Leonard should have been a lot better than he is now. If you look at his strengths as a prospect, if those were actual strengths for him now, he'd be one hell of a player.
Yeah.
Talking about like athleticism, defensive presence, a little bit of a low post game. Like, I don't know. And dude just ended up being a guy who doesn't defend, just shoots threes. If he ended up being a good defender alongside his shooting, and like, because if he ended up using his athleticism well, because he is pretty athletic, he just doesn't like use it to his advantage quite like he could, then he'd be one hell of a player.
That summer he got drafted, I saw him do a between the legs dunk as a 7-footer, and I was like so impressed with that athleticism. But yeah, it's kind of hard to fall in love with the athleticism sometimes because it doesn't necessarily translate to the basketball court.
I mean,
as you and I both know, we're not the most athletic, but we're highly.
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, it's tough. It's tough with centers. Now when the league's going more skilled, now you have like skilled big men, and you usually just take the guy who's more skilled. But like back then, it was where you'd kind of just have a lot of raw centers, and it'd be like, okay, this guy is strong.
Kind of get lucky.
Has the type of body where he could be like absolutely ripped, which he is now. He's 7'1", and he's athletic. Like back then, it was like, okay, that's a great base to work off of because you didn't really have bigs that were all that skilled. There was questions about Andre Drummond. Andre Drummond was kind of like, he was a better prospect than Myers Leonard, but he was also the same kind of prospect as Myers Leonard, just a raw big man. There was questions about his motor coming out of UConn, and he was just like athletic, big, who could rebound and defend, hopefully.
Myers could shoot, though, and Drummond couldn't. I guess that was the big difference. And as it started to trend towards more stretch center, stretch forward type, Drummond was kind of, I don't know. I still think there's always going to be a place for it in the league for guys like that. But, yeah, it's hard to know who's going to develop and who's not just based on, oh, this guy's 7 foot and he's super athletic.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna wrap up this podcast. I gotta go finish up some homework, get some stuff taken care of. But hopefully, we give you guys some good perspective on the Portland Trailblazers in the trade market this year. We hadn't really been talking much about trade stuff, so it was nice to just devote a whole podcast to really covering things and breaking things down, discussing the rumors that have been percolating lately. Hopefully we answered some of your questions as well. So with that, we're going to wrap up this podcast. Thank you to everybody who tuned in. Hope you guys have a good rest of your night. This is me here with Eric Brandt. We're signing off. As always, peace out.